And usually the submission has to be done well before you submit, right? And after this, you'll need to also submit a notification of intention to submit 3 months approximately before you actually submit your thesis. Okay. Levi.
Let me go ahead and introduce Levi. Lots of you were here when Levi did his COC 2 years ago. And so it's a real pleasure to be able to take one of our students from the early stages all the way through. And this is the final hurdle or the final rite of passage. And so it's really good. And with Levi, it's a particularly interesting experience as well, because it's one of our first experiences on having supervising somebody that lives outside of Australia. So that much of the supervision and so forth has been at 7 a.m. Friday morning Skype calls, which is sort of a convenient time for everybody but Phil. The product of strong, and I'm looking forward to Levi sharing with you what he's accomplished. Great, thank you.
So first, we'd like to take an opportunity to thank Herb and Phil for being such a wonderful and amazing PhD supervisors. This has been an experience which has really been life-changing, and someone mentioned that you shouldn't do a PhD unless you want to go on a journey, on an exploration, and I second that. The title at the end is not nearly as worth as the journey which it takes to get there. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to miss that journey. Try and find a new one to go on. So we're going to. So I really, really appreciate her taking me on as a student, and Phil also being a co-supervisor. So this quest was to try and find out whether one can intentionally foster purpose across the lifespan within youth and within older adults. So to do that, we did I did 3 studies, and I'm going to go through those, and what the intervention was is also an interventional PhD. So this is what we go through: definition of the construct of purpose at first, to find out what is it that we're trying to foster, and then why is purpose so important, the intervention, and then the 3 studies, the results, limitations, future research, and policy implications. That's what we're going to go through really quickly. So first we want to talk about where purpose comes from. Purpose, initially the Greek philosophers talked about their purpose in this kind of way. It would be strange then if a person should not choose the life that is his own, but rather that of something else. For what is proper to each is by nature most excellent and most pleasant for each. This kind of, find your own thing and then follow that. Also discussed by Viktor Frankl, as a very important thing for survival. And much more recently we have psychologists talking about purpose and different definitions of it. Cashin and Knight call it a central self-organizing life aim. Central because it's central to everything which one does, self-organizing, because everything gets organized around it. And a life aim is not just about going to the movies, it's actually something you want to do with your life. Others describe it, Mike Steger talks about it as an uncompromising of an understanding of self, the world around the self and how one fits in, what you might call niche. And then Bill Damon talks about it as this thing which you have to engage with the world beyond the self as well. So he has this thing which is really important to engage in the world beyond the self. And he actually makes this distinction between purpose and meaning, which I disagree with it in the thesis. And he says basically that meaning and purpose are 2 different constructs, and I actually bring empirical evidence to show that they're not 2 constructs at all. But the reason why he wants to say that is because he says purpose is this thing in which you engage with the world and contribute to the world. And you can have meaning where you don't engage with the world. And that can add meaning, and it seems to me to be an argument which doesn't hold. So why purpose? Purpose is really good for you. If you have purpose, you've got a lot of good things going in your life. If you don't have purpose, a lot of negative things can happen, or correlate with a lot of negative things. So As you get older, you're less likely to get Alzheimer's if you have purpose in life, and once you get Alzheimer's, it's actually less likely to progress as fast if you have purpose in life. In addition, less stress and less all these other things. You're going to live longer. You're less likely to get heart attacks, etc. And also for teens, also it's very good. All across the lifespan, it seems that purpose is correlated with lots of good things. Lack of purpose, lack of meaning is correlated with a lot of negative things. In youth, a sense of drift. People are more likely to die at every age if they have less purpose. Depression, homelessness, addictions, boredom, etc. It's also correlated positively with academic success for youth. So the question is, okay, if you get all these good things from purpose, how can we intentionally foster it, right? Because some people just lack purpose. Well, if we can intentionally foster purpose, then we get all the good results of it. So I created these two interventions, one for youth and one for adults. Youth one is basically a school intervention where there's a curriculum and there's an online application where the student goes through these steps, and it's actually coached by the teacher in the classroom. Adult intervention is self-paced with video instructions, and there is no interaction between the coach and the person who's actually doing the intervention. So those are the two interventions which I tested in the study. Before we can do that, though, we need to decide, well, we need to, how are we going to measure this thing? Okay, so for that we had a psychometric study. So there are actually 3 studies here. One is a psychometric study, a youth study in 2 high schools, and then adults 50+ study. So for the psychometric study, we just did all the regular things. We took 4 well-known purpose, meaning, and life instruments, and basically got samples of people to take them, including some of it was on Qualtrics, paid for it. Others were taken from people who just volunteered for the study to take these purpose and life tests. And then we did a full-scale, psychometric analysis of it, CFA, EFA, etc. So the aims of that was to find out that these were measures which were more or less done on or created using an adult population. We wanted to see, well, how well does that work for the youth population, because we're going to test this on youth. Wanted to see whether there were negatively worded item methods effects, because there were a lot of negatively worded items in this. So does that have an impact? We wanted to find out whether meaning and purpose were in fact one construct, or whether there were 2 constructs, as Damon has argued, and his students, they all argue it's 2 constructs. They'll go, they'll swear up and down there's 2 constructs. Well, is it? Or we can use meaning questions and purpose questions and actually see if people, does the factor structure hold up or not? And then, at the end, wanted to create a new purpose measure, which was designed especially for youth, and which would cover more of the domain space of purpose than the other purpose measures. So for example, you have some purpose measures which are focused on purposeful activities, some purpose measures which are focused more on how do I feel in relation to the world. So this will try and take all of those things together and create one short form purpose and life measure. So these were the methods which we used. Anyone's done psychometric, because I won't bore everyone with the details of it. Correlative uniquenesses, method, fact, strategies, etc. By factor, second order analysis, and obviously the CFA and EFA. These are some of the models which we fit to try and figure things out. Should I go into detail of this, or into the models? No. And then in order to create a short form, Herb Marsh has created a very a method for creating a short form measure, survey instrument, and I basically followed that in order to create this short form measure. And basically, if there was a clear method effect and wording, drop the negative items. Once I put all these purpose instruments together, basically they fell into 2 basic factors, negative and positive. So I just got rid of the negative items. Then there were, those were the highest factor loadings were retained. If they had 2 identical substantive items, then I dropped one of them. We had, if the modification indices for 2 of them, we showed the chi-square which would be gained if we allowed one of the parameters to be unconstrained, were high. I dropped one of those as well. We wanted to find items that contain aspects of each individual aspect of purpose. We wanted to make sure that we covered our ground on that. Sufficient items were retained to ensure coefficient alpha estimate of reliability of at least 0.8. The remaining items, we want to make sure that it could fit using these fit indices, and then the factor loadings we wanted to make sure were more than greater than 0.3. So those were the criteria which I used based on Herb's research to to create that final short scale and short form scale, and this is what resulted. We got really good factor loadings, 0.7 and 0.6, and really good fit. And this is the short scale purpose in life instrument which resulted, which covered more of the domain space of purpose than any of the other individual purpose instruments on their own. And I use this in my studies. Now the other thing is that not all purpose scales are created equal. Some of them are not very good. For example, the Reef psychological well-being purpose subscale I found was not very good at all. We still used it with the results in the study, but not all of them all are created equal. So now let's get into the studies themselves. We looked into the research to find out, well, what does foster purpose in life, and creating these interventions based on what actually fosters purpose. We used a whole bunch of different methodologies, from career development theory, self-determination theory, and others, to try and figure out, well, what can we put into this purpose intervention which will actually foster purpose. And there's lots of the aspects of what fosters purpose in life, which is found in the literature, found its way into this intervention. And it basically has 6 steps. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which you can read if you want, but basically it's about learning about yourself and learning who you are, what makes you tick, going and doing some exploration, figuring out how does that, what makes me tick, maybe fit in with something which I can do in the world, which I can really enjoy and feel is really something which I can relate to and fits me, so that's fit and niche, and then go and do greater exploration in that, and then finally create a roadmap which allows you to go from here to there. Now, for the adult study, it was more of a post-retirement purpose in life, some kind of things which one can fill one's time doing which are meaningful and purposeful post-retirement. For youth, it was much more career-related. So the study which we did for youth basically involved 2 schools, both here in Sydney, 2 relatively high-achieving schools, one all boys and girls school, and one of them, which was a full intervention school, it was a full year 10 which did it. The other one, it was also the full year 10, but it was split into 2 groups. One was an active control group which did this thing called all-well testing, which is basically, they took a bunch of surveys over the course of the day, and they were given basically the results of what kind of career they should go into. The intervention group, which did my purpose in life intervention, they also tried to fit it into one day. That's why I call it a partial intervention, because they were trying to do it similar to the all-well. My purpose intervention is not designed to be done in one day. It's designed to be done over 6 or 8 weeks, and therefore they didn't do it fully. So we had 3 groups. One which was an active control group, one which was they kind of partially did the purpose intervention, and then in the intervention school, it took them about 6 or 8 weeks, and they did it during in the morning. In Australia, they have the groups get together and spend like half an hour in the morning. Yeah, it wasn't pastoral care, it was homeroom or something like that, and they did that over the course of 6 weeks. At the end of it, both groups actually did work experience related to that which they found in the intervention. And then at the end of that, they created their roadmap to how they were going to get there. So we had 2 data collection points, one part before and one after the intervention. And the data analysis was basically regression, and we did also aptitude treatment interaction type analysis, which basically tried to find whether level of purpose changed, the results changed based on level of purpose. So people started lower, whether they gained more, or people who started higher, whether they gained more or less, etc., versus maybe people who were just in the middle and standardized all the scores in order to be able to do it, look at it on the level of standard deviations. So the research questions were, well, can we foster purpose in life? That's number 1. Number 2, does it impact, if we can foster purpose, does that impact different levels based on levels of well-being, levels of purpose, where they start off with? And also, do other indicators of well-being also increase as purpose increases? So that was another one of the questions she asked. And here are the results which we have. From the youth study, what we found was that for the main effect, there was actually no significant main effect at all on this study for the full treatment group or for the partial treatment group. But we did find that there was a interaction effect. Those who started lower on purpose actually gained significantly in purpose in life, both on the new purpose measure, which is the one we created for the study, the MLQP, which is Stiger's well-known measure, and I see other people also using it here as well, and also for the APSI, which is a measure which actually designed to it was designed to measure sense of identity, but has lots of purpose measures in it, lots of purpose questions as well. So there was an interaction effect. Those who started lower actually had an impact. Those who started high, they had no significant impact at all. And these are the effect sizes. You can see for those who started lower, 0.59 effect, and for APSI, 0.63, etc. So that's for the youth study. Those are the results, and we could therefore conclude that yes, you can intentionally foster purpose in life using a instrument or using an intervention within the school context. Those who start lower gain more. No evidence that those who started high gained at all or lost, and we didn't find any gain in other indicators of well-being. Okay, so for the school intervention, we found no gain for any other indicators of well-being as purpose gained. Those were the results. This is the weakest, as Herb mentioned, the weakest of my studies. So then the next one was for adults. Research questions were almost identical. We fitted three models to the data, to the results. So the first one was just post-test follow-up. Okay, so it was basically post-test follow-up as predicted by group and baseline. The second one was long-term follow-up as predicted by group and baseline, and the third one was long-term follow-up. Sorry, the second one was long-term follow-up as predicted by group and baseline. The third one was long-term follow-up as predicted by post-test and baseline, group, post-test, and baseline. So the third one was took post-test into consideration to see whether that, once we had that, whether people actually gained from post-test to long-term follow-up. And the third one was, the second one was whether people gained from baseline. The third one was, did people gain from baseline to post-test and then from post-test to long-term follow-up. The second one was second model was to see whether people gained from baseline to long-term follow-up. Long-term was 3 months later. And then the first one was just to see whether pre-test, post-test was again post-test. So those were the models which I fit. And these were, I seem to have missed it was a randomized controlled trial. I seem to have missed the slide which said that, I don't know why. It was a randomized controlled trial where we had about 89 participants. We obviously did some blocking, so if there were husbands and wives, etc., we made sure they went to the same group. So it was ended up being about 43 to 49 or something like that, or 43 to 46, whatever it was, in both of the groups. So they're probably randomized, and these were the results. So you see the results of the post-treatment effect post-test. So there we can, So you see here the post-test. This is model 1, which is pre-test post-test. That was basically, this is searching for purpose. We didn't expect it to be significant, but for all these, it was significant for all of the purpose in life instruments. And then when you look at the next one, this is model 2, which is long-term follow-up as predicted by baseline. So it was significant for the new purpose one, significant for the MLQP, significant for most of them. And then when we took post-test into consideration, so we were looking to predict long-term follow-up based on post-test and baseline. So we see that there is significance for the reef purpose, but not for the rest of them. So we do see that's what we call sleeper effect, right? I believe we see that for that. We don't see For the rest of them, what we see that the effect is still there 3 months later, but it didn't necessarily grow from time 2 to time 3. That's what that shows. And then finally, for the interaction effect, we see that again there's an interaction of those who start lower gain more of MLQP. That's for all 3 models. Okay, so that shows that from the MLQP, which is a very well validated meaning life questionnaire, those who start lower will continue gaining in purpose, okay, they gain from time 1 to time 2, and then from time 2 to long-term follow-up, they will continue to gain an increase in purpose in life. That's what that shows here. So these are pretty strong results of the effectiveness of this kind of purpose intervention in an adult population. And these are the effect sizes for the simple slopes. And you can see that the treatment effect here for model 1 is pretty strong for those who start low. It's 1.2, and these are standard deviations for the new purpose. And then as you go on, you can see 1.37 for MLQP, 1.56 APSI. These are for the second model and for the third model, not as strong. But you can see that the leaf purpose one is still there and significant, even for the long-term follow-up. And that's what we saw in the previous slide. So the conclusion of the study is yes, you can intentionally foster purpose in adults 50 and older. Those who start low will gain more. And this, I didn't show the slide, but gains in purpose of the adult study do coincide with gains in other areas of well-being. Okay? So for the youth study, we didn't see that. There was lots of issues with some of the youth studies, but for the adult study, we do see what research shows, which is as purpose increases, other areas indicators of well-being also indicated. Limitations of the study, for psychometric, the new purpose scale was only valid in that youth sample. We didn't use a second sample to do some kind of cross-validation. We could also look at it on younger kids and also on adults to see how well it does. The youth study was a quasi-experimental design. You can't make any causal implications from it. And the limitations to how the intervention was implemented in the schools as well. We dealt with schools. Schools are very hard places to do studies. And the adult one, there was no random sampling, so you can't, no real generalizability for it. But it was a randomized control trial, so we can imply causality. So direction to future research, for the psychometric study, we might want to kind of test that and validate a little bit more. The youth study, we might want to actually do a proper randomized control trial where it's fully properly implemented within schools. And for the adult study, we might want to test it on other populations of adults of other age groups. Policy implications, oh man, have I gone on a good time?
You're fine.
I'm good time, okay. Policy implications for the psychometric study, I would say that, we now have potentially a really good survey which takes into consideration lots of the domain space of purpose and takes also into consideration the other purpose instruments, other people's views on what purpose and meaning in life is, in order to be able to have a one short form study, easy to implement, 6 questions, which is well validated in a youth sample, could be very valuable for people who are interested in fostering purpose in life. As a matter of fact, Mike Steger, he wrote a paper where he argues that purpose in life is so important that he thinks it should be a matter of public policy to make sure that people become more purposeful, because it really has such great implications on all these areas of well-being, including longevity and health. So therefore, having, and also within schools, right? The at-risk kids are the ones who lack purpose very often. So having this way in which we can measure this, taking into consideration all the different people's views for what purpose is, could be very valuable for policymakers. For the youth studies, well, you've got at-risk kids. We want to be able to do something innovative and different in order to be able to take them out of their at-risk status. So they shouldn't be at risk for depression, shouldn't be at risk for substance abuse and other kinds of negative behaviors. Well, this might be a pathway in which they can look at. I'm not saying to use the intervention I created, but interventions can foster that kind of purpose. And the adult study as well. Health advocates should be looking at this kind of thing. Well, as people age, healthcare is much more expensive. One of the ways in which to keep people healthy, besides going to the gym, is also to increase their purpose in life. So this might be something which those kind of policymakers might want to look at. And I said it was going to take an hour and a half, but it was 25 minutes. There we go. Thank you.
Questions? Comments?
thinking about an analogy to nutrition. So, I don't know where this will fly, but I'm thinking about the issue of we know from previous literature that people who have purpose in life have higher well-being, and your study was very much about can you create so that they say they have a purpose in life, right? But it feels like, it feels like to me, this is a little bit like isolating, vitamin B12 or something, and then saying, but if we can just give them more B12, then they'll be better off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether purpose in life is something that's much more organic and embedded in a context and more dynamic than a single kind of, here's my purpose and I know I have it sort of thing. And this is particularly true for children. I was thinking very much about what does it mean to say a child has a purpose in life? I mean, they haven't done anything yet, like they're just, they're kind of, their purpose is just inherited, are they, so there's this, do you see what I'm getting at here? I'm wondering whether you can necessarily say, join the dots between the type of purpose that you've managed to shape up in your program and the type of purpose that's associated with well-being. Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, for the first part of your question, there are people like Todd Kashdan who basically argue that purpose is the highest level of construct from which everything else flows. So in other words, it's not just like a little bit of Brackman B. It's like, if you have this, then it correlates to all these other indicators. Now, granted, my youth study didn't show that; it was relatively weak, but the adult study did show that. Okay, so as purpose increases, a lot of other indicators of well-being also increase. So that's the first thing. So it could be, it's the whole meal, and at least some have argued that it's the whole meal. And when you look at it, I looked at this very carefully. Now, what's the focus of purpose in life that we help people kind of find? And for youth, it seemed to make sense that it should be a career-focused purpose. So it's something we should look for in their life that they're going to do as they grow older. For adults, we thought it was much broader than that, and therefore we didn't. They had the latitude to find lots of different things which might feel purposeful for them in that part of the study. So.
I have a question that kind of sort of follows from that a bit. It's a bit more conceptual or theoretical. It has to do with the intervention. I'm wondering how you fostered or promoted or accounted for autonomy, because I'm wondering if purpose is necessarily as higher order as you suggest, that if you're promoting meaning and purpose, and that meaning and purpose isn't autonomously selected, or if people are just arbitrarily coming up with the meaning / purpose, if they already had nothing, it makes sense that they made gains. But if they already have something, you may actually be compromising their autonomy, which might explain why people who didn't have low-level purpose in the first place didn't make gains in child study. I just wondering how you accounted for autonomy.
Well, we made sure that in the intervention and when we trained the teachers, there was a whole section on how to enhance autonomy. In other words, how to make sure that you were not foistering a purpose upon them, but they're actually discovering from within themselves, and it's completely an autonomous method of doing it. And I studied self-determination theory quite a bit to make sure that we incorporated those elements into the intervention to make sure.
Sorry, Levi. Sorry.
No, because that actually is a really important thing, because you can't. Well, one of the fundamentally, which I came to, and a lot of people said, you can't give people a purpose.
Right.
They have to discover it.
Yeah.
And a lot of teachers think that they'll give the kid the purpose, or the parents think they'll give the kid the purpose, and that will go counter against everything. So.
Does any purpose count?
That's actually the argument between Bill Damon and these other scholars, right, which I talk about in the thesis. My argument is that basically, what are we trying to foster purpose for? To gain greater well-being, right? So if that's the case, as long as a person feels it's purposeful, they're going to gain the results of what that purpose is. So the difference between someone who's going off into Papua New Guinea to try and help people, or the person who's hedge fund manager making billions of dollars and just buying his private jet, they can both feel somehow they're contributing in a big way and feel purposeful as a result and gain well-being from it. Although objectively, Bill Damon would like to say, no, 1 second, it's not contributing to the world, therefore it's not purpose. Well, maybe in some kind of objective sense it's not purpose, but what are we trying to foster? We're trying to foster purpose, that the person should gain well-being. If they feel it's purposeful, we might disagree that it is. You know, did Hitler feel that was his purpose, for example? Use an extreme example. He may have felt very purposeful with that. There's a whole study into ignoble purpose, right? A lot of people try and study what about unknown purpose, ignoble.
So can you reconcile it all with the data that suggests that some life aspirations don't seem to foster well-being and others do?
I haven't looked into that. Yeah.
Because that might answer the Hitler question.
Is there data which shows that it doesn't, right? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that things like dominance, for instance, over other people,
Right.
or enriching oneself, or having great images, even if they're strongly endorsed by the person as a life aspiration, don't seem to produce wellness.
Even if the person will say, I feel that's very highly purposeful.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Somewhat, but in your intervention, did you see anything like that? Did you?
I'm gonna check for it.
What was
You
the,
never
what was
asked
the,
what
con- what was the
purpose was.
content of the purposes that
Right.
they arrived at in the intervention? Did you see that?
Do they have to report content?
They did, but I never studied it.
Oh.
We created huge treasure trove of content. If you want, you can, anyone, if they want, can study it.
And you have those contents.
We have a lot of it because they filled out the whole intervention with lots of details about themselves, etc.
It's a huge mentality, because it's a computer program. It's
Yeah.
going through,
Yeah, we'd have to kind of download all the data if someone wants to look at it.
My guess is that you have some moderators.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that some people have done studies about that, and for kids, Matt Bundick did some studies about that to try and find it. He didn't really find evidence that kids who have purpose to do things other than, what you might call a liberal worldview of doing good for the world, actually had a negative impact on people's perception of purpose.
I've seen
You're-
some data to the contrary.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Your intervention may have put some constraints on that as well, because going through the intervention, there is almost a demand characteristic that you're doing something meaningful in a broader sense rather than a selfish sense. I think that was the case. I think that would have been the case.
I tried to actually leave it as open as possible, but it could be teachers who did it would find it difficult. Like, so when I was doing the intervention with people, I did a whole intervention with youth after school, which didn't end up in my PhD because we weren't able to get enough data. But I would make sure that, kids, there was one kid who said he wanted to be a porn star, and another kid said he wanted to sell marijuana, which is legal in Colorado, by the way. And a tattoo art, lots of different kinds of things kids came up with, and it was all like, yeah, okay. No job. We made sure not to make any judgments.
Were they all professions? They had to ascribe a profession?
It was career focused. Yeah.
Well, that was what I was saying, that is somewhat of a constraint. I don't know about the adult one, though. The adult one is probably more open-ended.
Yeah. Because it's not career focused. Yeah.
And particularly as you move toward retirement, it might be more reasonable that you choose something that's selfish.
I don't think we had any post-50-year-olds who want to be porn stars.
Right.
Levi, you underestimate us old people.
There's a really interesting postscript to this study in terms of Levi discovering his sense of purpose.
Right.
So Levi came to us as a rabbi, and Levi is now working as a data scientist. And so this notion that you learn statistical analysis through osmosis, even if you're from a different country, and having to do it through Skype and internet and so forth. So we're really proud of how well Levi took on the statistical sorts of things and challenges that Phil and I kept throwing at him.
I do have a question about your title here.
Yeah,
You have purpose in life, meaning in life,
yeah,
in the title.
yeah,
The first thing that came to my mind was, well, I'm talking about two different things. I'm
Yeah.
talking about one single thing with two different names.
yeah. Well, it's kind of what, I discussed that in the thesis, right? That basically there is that argument that they're two separate things. The point I'm trying to make is they're not, they're really one thing. So like the meaning in life questionnaire, for example, it has purpose questions and meaning questions. And I tried very hard to figure out whether we could tease two factors out of it, and it was just impossible. They were one factor. So it's actually a dig at some of Damon's people.
Any of the markup?
I know, no.
You see, it also strikes me that meaning and purpose may not be the same as aspiration. And some of the conversation has just been about aspirations. It seems like a lesser thing, and yet it sounds like that was what some of your young people, at least, were basing their responses on. What would you say about
What
that?
do you mean? They were basing their response on aspirations rather than purpose? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, a goal, this sort of goal-focused
Aspiration.
aspirational thing. I want to be a tattoo artist or whatever, sell marijuana, whatever it was. That doesn't, I don't know, is that purpose or is that just a rather
So-
specific aspiration?
So I was talking about, like, along the way, along the journey of the intervention, they put down potential careers. But that's not the end of it. They go into it and say, well, how does this fit with who I am as an individual? So they actually, based on some real deep self-exploration, they kind of match those potential careers with what they've learned about themselves. So, at the end, the aspiration has to be related to niche, right? That's the idea. How I understand myself and the world around myself.
So did some of them change their initial aspirations once they understood that it had to be
Yeah, I found that a lot.
congruent with their values or whatever?
Yeah, I found that a lot.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And can I ask you just a very practical question? Can you say a little more about the active control group in
Yeah.
the school study?
Yeah, they did this thing called Orwell testing. There's another name for it now, but it's a bunch of psychometric tests which they take, which then get evaluated by this company called Orwell, and then they get back a report. And the report tells them what careers they should potentially go into. So it's something a year 10 would do in a school in Australia.
Ah, I see. It sounds like the lack of bit of autonomy.
Yeah.
But that was what the school was already doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
And students in that school then elected to do either this or that. And it turned out about 50-50 did this and 50% did the other.
Oh, so students volunteered as to which group to go into?
Yes. Yeah, without being given real details about what the alternative group was. There was some dissatisfaction in the school generally around Orwell testing.
Yeah, plans to analyse the sort of qualitative side of things and the detail.
I had plans, and I actually did a bunch of interviews with a lot of the, but I only, I mean, you could do 3 PhDs in that, I guess.
Yeah, no, it just seems like at least the adult data, well, probably both, but certainly the adult data set would be extremely interesting in terms of.
I don't think you want to get your PhD anyway. I just finished reading it, I don't want to go to the big.
You made the offhand comment that the riff scale didn't work at all. It was a terrible scale, and yet it was the one that seemed to work the best. So
Yeah,
I'm confused by it.
because I want to be honest. Yeah, it did work well, but the fact, from a psychometric perspective, it didn't.
Oh, psychometrically, what,
Yeah.
it didn't have a good internal consistency or something?
Yeah, etc. Fact loads were terrible. It was very difficult to get. Yeah.
We found that years ago as well. It's dreadful. Not just the purpose scale, but all of them.
I wish it wasn't that case, because then I would be able to say, look, the best scale got me the best results.
Yeah.
All right, any more questions? No? Thank you all for coming, and thank you for the good presentation. All right, may I ask the panel members to stay here and